May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our power, to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy, to serve the spirit of freedom in the fullness of community. Those of you who've been around for a while, how long did it take you to learn those words by heart? A long time? Not long. 3 weeks. Anne Slater, killing us all in the best way. One of the things I find most powerful is when you hear the voices of the toddlers in this church shouting them out, because they don't read, they learn them by heart right away. And I always lose it every time I hear some of the little kids in this church who know those words so well. Each week we gather, we say these words together. We say them as we begin our worship service. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our power, to heal, to help, to bless, and to serve. Because at the very center of the theology of this congregation and our theology as Unitarian Universalists, period, is the affirmation that we have power. That each one of us, no matter whether we are an elder or a child, whether we are wealthy or we can't pay our bills, that we have power no matter our race or gender or sexual orientation or immigration status, that we have power regardless of our physical abilities. We have power. We have inherent worth, our lives matter, and we have power to create change in this world. At the very center of our theology is the belief that our job in this one short life that each of us is given is to heal and to help and to bless and to serve and to make the world a better place, not just for ourselves, but for the wider community of humans and for the earth. And so today we gather to reflect on our own power, to take time as individuals to think about how each of us might use that power in this world that we are given and how we might use that power better. And to take time as a religious community to talk about how we can use the power of our coming together here in this congregation and with other congregations across the city and the world to make our community not just more just, but more livable for our people and for the planet. Many of you know, as Eliza mentioned earlier, that we are members of POWER Interfaith. And I was realizing as I wrote this, it might get weird when I say power and I mean the organization power versus when I say power and just mean like power. So I'm going to do my best to call POWER Interfaith. But if you get confused, just know, if it doesn't make sense, think maybe the other meaning of power. Maybe it'll make more sense. So we're a member of POWER Interfaith, which is a coalition of 50 congregations here in the city of Philadelphia and another 100 across the state that join together to work on the root causes of injustice in our communities. POWER Interfaith uses a community organizing model. It's a way of working for social change that says that the real power, lowercase power, in our democracy lies with the people and not with the politicians and not with the benevolent, privileged, and not with the massive and moneyed corporations. It lies with the people. In POWER Interfaith, we work side by side with people of many faiths, people of many races, people of many neighborhoods, and many types of economic means. And through getting to know each other and telling our own stories, we work to identify the biggest injustices we're seeing in our city and to seek lasting solutions and then work to make them real. Because the work of making justice belongs to each one of us. Each of us has a role to play, whether that's joining together at a march or testifying at city council or meeting in a small group to get to know other people and build out a strategy, to simply showing up when someone from church says, you know, it'll really matter if you're there. Some of you have been part of the work of POWER before. Actually, can you raise your hands if you've ever participated in something having to do with power, anything from a big thing to a little meeting? A lot of us have taken part before. And so talk to any of those people afterwards if you want to know more about what that's like. We have a lot of people who participate in the Live Free campaign that works against mass incarceration and gun violence. Many of us have worked with the Save Chinatown coalition through POWER that's trying to keep our historic Chinatown from being decimated by the arena being proposed by the 76ers, or through some of their other teams. We've all experienced some significant wins with those teams, including the recent creation of the Civilian Police Oversight Committee that POWER was really instrumental in making happen. So I'm going to tell a story of power in a minute, but first we're going to take a moment to just watch a short video that Power made for us and for the other congregations who are in this process with us. That's going to be shared, that's created by Bishop Royster, who I think many of you know has been the executive director of Power for a while, and was, unfortunately for us and fortunately for us, just poached to become the executive director of Faith in Action, period, so that he's the national head of everything rather than just the Pennsylvania head of everything. But in this video, he speaks to us here in Philadelphia, and he also just sends his greetings, because I talked to him on the phone yesterday. So you good, Mike?
Greetings.
Let's watch it.
I'm Bishop Dwayne Royster, Executive Director of POWER Interfaith. I'm here at Mother Bethel AME Church, a founding member of our organization, sitting on the oldest piece of land continuously held by African Americans. 13 years ago, Power Philadelphia was founded at Tinley Temple United Methodist Church, which over 2,000 people of faith and moral courage gathered to launch our organization. Since then, we've won raises for workers at the Philadelphia airport, millions of dollars for our public schools, a civilian police oversight committee, and passage of the whole home repair program to help Pennsylvanians repair Royster. Greetings. I'm Bishop Dwayne Royster, Executive Director of POWER Interfaith. I'm here at Mother Bethel AME Church, a founding member of our organization, sitting on the oldest piece of land continuously held by African Americans. 13 years ago, Power Philadelphia was founded at Tinley Temple United Methodist Church, which over 2,000 people of faith and moral courage gathered to launch our organization. Since then, we've won raises for workers at the Philadelphia airport, millions of dollars for our public schools, a civilian police oversight committee, and passage of the whole home repair program to help Pennsylvanians repair their homes. I'm proud of what we've accomplished so far. But beloveds, as many of you know from our lived experiences, the deck is still stacked against us. Philadelphia is the economic driver of the state. We pay more in taxes, we have more employed people, votes, and spending power than any other county in Pennsylvania. And yet, we are the poorest big city in the nation. Our schools are crumbling. We are quickly entering a housing crisis, and our minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour, all the while corporations and billionaires extract money from our community. We are told over and over again by politicians there isn't enough money for Philadelphia, that we cannot control our own destiny as a city, and that this is all we'll ever be. This is the myth of scarcity. We're told that this scarcity is the fault of each other, and to blame young people, people of color, people from other neighborhoods, and immigrants. We are deeply segregated and separated, left fighting each other, while the politicians and billionaires benefit from this us versus them mentality. Corporations like Comcast and 76 DevCorp, Pico and Aramark spend millions to buy our elected officials and lobby both parties to continue to extract from our communities and raise their own profit. Billionaires like Jeff Yaz, the richest man in Pennsylvania, uses his money to rig the political system to work for him. He is the largest spender on elections in PA and also gives significantly to right-wing lobbying groups like the Commonwealth Foundation, who fight against funding the public schools. They block increases to the minimum wage and so much more. The Pennsylvania legislature purposely undermines the autonomy of our city by making it illegal for Philadelphia to set its own minimum wage, by keeping $8 billion in a rainy day fund while our public schools are filled with asbestos, and by passing Act 40, which strips almost all power from the democratically elected Philadelphia district attorney. Universities like Penn, Drexel, and Temple have been buying up real estate in black and brown neighborhoods to gentrify our city, while paying no taxes to invest in our schools, our streets, or our homes. The results? While billionaires, universities, and corporations get richer, the rest of us suffer. Wealthy developers build high-rise condos and luxury apartments, resulting in increased rents, mortgages, and displaced residents. Corporations, banks, and billionaires extract wealth from Black and brown communities with no investment in our neighborhoods, all while politicians are passing harsh laws and policies that drive the incarceration of our Black and brown siblings and do nothing to keep our families safe from the rising gun violence. The Pennsylvania legislature has failed Black, brown, poor, and working class students by systematically and chronically underfunding the public school system by an estimated $4.5 to $6 billion. Utility companies are raising our utility rates while drilling and fracking our land, causing increased asthma rates in our neighborhoods, worsening our air quality, and poisoning our communities and planet. All the while, we're told there isn't enough money or resources for all of us to thrive, and that our suffering and misery is our neighbor's fault. We are told that Philadelphia is dangerous, corrupt, and dragging our state down. We are told that the reason we're struggling is because of each other. We're being pitted against each other. This narrative keeps us skeptical and suspicious of each other, isolated in our pain, and allows the forces in power to continue to exploit and profit off our communities. As people of faith and moral courage, we know that scarcity is a myth. Our faith tells us that resources are abundant and we've been given all we need to prosper and thrive. There is enough wealth and resources in our city and state for all of us to live in safe and thriving neighborhoods, for housing to be affordable and accessible for all people, for our schools to be fully and equitably funded, and for all of us to have clean air and water. We reject the story we've been told that we are more different than alike, that our interests are not the same, that our neighbors are to blame. Instead, we are motivated by and called to lead, to make true a vision where all of us, no matter the color of our skin, the faith we practice, how much money we make, or what neighborhood we live in, can thrive and prosper. It will take thousands of Philadelphians from every neighborhood united in a common vision and purpose to shift the political reality of our city. We need to do three things to defeat the system of extraction and the politics of division. First, we need to build bridges across neighborhoods, across lines of faith and race to build real independent political power rooted in our faith communities. Second, we need to engage thousands of our neighbors to become voters in this next election. And third, we need to lead together to enroll hundreds of people as grassroots leaders with us in the struggle for a multiracial democracy in Philadelphia. For our collective vision of a thriving Philadelphia to come true, it will require each of us demonstrating leadership in our own congregations and in our own communities. We're glad you're here. Welcome to Power Interfaith.
Thank you, Bishop. So there is a call at this moment for all of us to somehow take part in a new commitment towards transformation in the city of Philadelphia. But before we begin this work, I want to tell a story of Power's first large campaign, which took place right before we joined Power in 2017. So I think many of us don't know it as well as we know some of the other work that Power has done. And I've been finding it really inspiring as something that is making me remember that like large-scale transformation can happen when small, regular people come together. So let me tell you a story. Power began initially, before it was an organization, with a series of something like 1,200 conversations. We call them one-on-ones or one-to-ones. They're conversations just where one person sits down with another person, and they each tell a piece of their story. Usually it's something about how they came to understand injustice in their lives as a child, maybe, and why they care about making change now. And through these conversations, people discover what they might have in common and what opportunities for change they see together. and what kind of commitments each one might be interested in making and working for change. And then usually they build a friendship. How many of you have done a one-to-one before through POWER or some other community organizing? Did you get some friends out of those conversations? I know I have. Some of the deeper relationships I have began in that way. So 1,200 conversations like this happened across the city, across faith lines and race lines and class lines, and the people kept track of what they learned from these conversations together. And unsurprisingly, there were many areas of injustice that arose in those conversations that people wanted to change, from healthcare to education to housing to criminal justice reform and jobs. And there were some people who felt really committed to taking the next step together that came out of those conversations, and so they moved into what are called research meetings, where they look at the kinds of opportunities for change that might be happening in the city at this moment in time. And then a large group of those folks got together and decided that better jobs was like the thing that was the most important to them all, the most important to most of them at that time. And so they discovered that there was this loophole in a city ordinance at the time. The city ordinance was supposed to require everyone who was any kind of contractor or subcontractor with the city to make 150% of the minimum wage plus benefits. So that was what was supposed to happen. But what POWER learned was that there were lots of people who were working in the service industry at the airport who were only making tip wages. So they were technically subcontractors to the city, but they were only making tip wages. So sometimes $3, $4, $5 an hour. And there were tens of thousands of workers in this category, from the people who move bags from the curbside drop-off onto the airplanes, to the people who prepare food for the airplanes, to any of the people who push someone who needs a wheelchair through the terminals. They had no health benefits and no paid leave if their child got sick, and they had no union protection, and they often didn't receive any tips either. And so POWER joined with these folks and got to work, looking to help make sure that they had union protection and help to close that loophole in the city ordinance so that it wasn't just some people who were subcontractors who got this benefit, but all people who were subcontractors who got this benefit. And they worked not just to get them 150% of the minimum wage, but an actual living wage in the city. It took hundreds of meetings. It took lay people and clergy organizing together. It took Christians and Jews and Muslims and UUs and ethical culture members and more. It took elders who needed wheelchairs at the airport when they took a flight, testifying before city council and talking about how essential those workers are to their life and to their quality of living, and how they didn't know that they were supposed to tip those workers because they assumed those workers made a minimum wage, or maybe even a living wage. It took clergy getting arrested at an impromptu sit-in at the airport when they showed up in solidarity with airport service workers who had done just a one-day strike and been fired for striking. It happened to happen right before the Democratic National Convention was here, which maybe got a little bit more attention on it. Some of you might remember those times. And it took a massive door-knocking campaign to get people to vote on a ballot initiative that would grant those workers, and many, many more, an actual living wage. There were moments along the way that each of their efforts failed. Sometimes they left meetings thinking that it was all over. There was no chance before finding a new way to keep moving. There were times they thought the effort would fall apart, but eventually it worked. And those tens of thousands of workers who had no union protections and had no sick leave and had no health insurance and were sometimes making as low as $3 an hour and not receiving tips make something like $17 an hour now. And they can take a day off to be with a sick kid. Anyone who has kids or who has ever known that has ever had kids before know that there's like lots of days that you have to take off to be with your sick kids. Something like $25 million a year is now going into those workers' pockets and their families' pockets. And we know that most of those workers live in the poorest parts of the city. Most of those workers are Black and brown. It made a massive, transformative difference for tens of thousands of people in the city of Philadelphia. And POWER was the leading organization to make that happen. This is what is possible when we use our power together. This is a story that's not an ancient parable, and it didn't happen somewhere else, and it didn't happen because the best experts were hired to lobby in the halls of government. It happened in our time with normal people just like us who work together with others across the city whose faith might be practiced differently, whose skin color is maybe different, who maybe lives in a different neighborhood, but who all believe that every human being has inherent worth, and every human being should be treated with dignity and fairness. And we all got to know each other, and we talked about what mattered most, and we looked for opportunities to change, and we told our stories. And we knocked on our neighbors' doors, and we sat down and we sang freedom songs, and we locked arms in solidarity with those who are oppressed the most. And it changed. And so this is what we're trying to do again. We're working with Power right now to have a lot of these kinds of conversations, these one-to-one conversations again, and hear what issues are most important to most of the people across the city of Philadelphia. Because there's something like 30,000 people represented across those 50 congregations. We are just one of very many. And to use what we learned from those conversations to choose a direction forward. So far, what we've been hearing most is that housing is important across all of the congregations, all of the neighborhoods, whether people rent or whether they own or whether they're unhoused. Housing is important to all of us because we can see that the price of housing is skyrocketing. We can see that it's getting harder and harder for people to simply have a place to call home. We see the unhoused population having a rougher time. We see it's harder to find a shelter to go to at night. It's harder to be in a neighborhood where we know our neighbors and don't just live next door to a massive development corporation. And so one of the things that Power has asked of us today that I'm going to ask of you all to join me in is to fill out a survey. It should only take a couple of minutes. If you're here in person, you got it in your order of service. It's the green piece of paper. Power actually, so before we actually go forward, there's going to be, there's a link in the chat, so if you're here with us virtually, I invite you to fill it out online. There's a QR code on the green piece of paper. Power's preference is if it's easy for you to fill it out like on your phone with the QR code to do that, because then nobody has to type it up afterwards. If you have any hesitation about doing that at all, I invite you to fill it out in real life, and we're just going to take a couple of minutes to do this because this is going to be part of the piece of Power's work to figure out how to move forward. So let's just take a few minutes to do that, and Sheru has some pens for anybody who needs one. So maybe raise your hand if you'd like a pen, and we'll pass those out, and we'll just take a few minutes. Thanks, everybody. If you don't live in the city, you still circle Center City because we're a Center City congregation. And this is like a regional thing. If you were just visiting from out of town, I invite you to just like fill it out for your own reference. And if you feel moved to begin to take action in your own community, take it with you at home and see where you can plug in at home. But let's just take a moment, fill it out here. Just see what is most meaningful to you, and then we'll bring them together afterwards. My friends, I know that there are many ways that each of us goes about making the world a better place. This is not the only one. I know that many of us devote ourselves in our work lives to helping make the world better in a million different ways, and not all of us need to do the same thing. Not all of us need to be the people who testify, or the ones who march, or the ones who get arrested, or the ones who go to hours and hours of meetings. But I do believe, and I believe that our theology tells us that it is in coming together that we actually are able to create transformation, that we're able to create large-scale change. And we have a reason to believe that we have done it before and we can do it again. And so I invite you all, I want to thank you all for participating. It means a lot to Power. It means a lot to the leaders in Power in this congregation. For those of you who feel moved to find out more, Sheru, do you want to just raise your hand or maybe rise? Sheru Hoffman is here and will be having a table somewhere in here afterwards if you want to find more or talk to her about what it's like to be involved going forward with this effort in POWER. Thanks, Yeru. And we're going to be working with POWER around voter engagement stuff as well. So feel free to join people in writing those voting letters this Sunday after church, and we'll be telling you more about the ways that we're going to be working with them going forward. As a church, I know that we are one of the only social institutions that still exists where people who have no place to go can come and get help. Every single week there are people who come to our door who, because either they've been treated kindly here before, or because they see the word church in our name, or because they need a meal or some help finding a place to sleep for the night, or a bus or a train ticket back home after a hospital stay. Sometimes they just want someone to have a spiritual conversation with them. Sometimes they just want to be treated like a fellow human being rather than ignored on the street. And every week we help these people who come to our door, and every week we will continue to do that as long as there are people who come to the door. But my friends, I feel so grateful to be part of a congregation that is working not just to meet the need when it arrives to us, but also to address the injustice at the root source. Thank you all for being part of this. May we go forth and use our power to heal and help and serve and bless the world. Amen.
Hi, I'm Reverend Hannah Capaldi.
And I'm Reverend Abby Tennis. We are the ministers at the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, where our mission is to awaken love and justice in our lives and in the world.
We're so grateful that you watched, and we hope that the sermon connected with your soul.
We also want to invite you to join us for a live worship service every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can always find the link to that service on our website at www.philauu.org. In these services, you'll hear words like you've just heard, and you also get a chance to greet one another, pray together, sing together, and we even hold a virtual coffee hour after services to get a chance to greet some new and old friends.
If you want to support the mission of this community and you feel moved to give, you can do so by going to the website that Reverend Abby just mentioned. You can find that link below, or you can text 215-709-5095 and follow the prompts to give.
If someone in your life needs to hear these words today, we encourage you to share this video. And again, thank you so much for watching.
We hope to see you soon.